Our second speaker was Rita Lennon, a Year 13 student from Kaitaia College in Northland.
It takes a village to raise a child. Only when surrounded by different people who have come together as a whole can this child learn to live and to love. Only when experiencing a melting pot of personalities and opinions can this child hope to grow and develop its own values. Only by being taught that differences should be celebrated and not mocked can this child hope to live peacefully within the village. Say that this child was not raised by the village, but rather by one family who had been in the village longer than all others. This child is kept inside with siblings who all look and talk the same, who all have similar opinions and all have similar personalities. The day that this child is allowed outside is the day that they realize the people next door aren't the same. They look funny. Their food's weird. They talk strange. They're different. And the child is frightened because the most terrifying and infuriating thing in the world is a thing which you do not understand. This fear and this anger is passed down to the next child and the next and the next until one day someone else moves to the village who is not the same. And suddenly, the person next door just doesn't seem so different anymore because the two houses and their families have something to unite them: a deep mistrust of the third. We are the children. We have been kept cooped up inside our houses instead of wandering through and appreciating the diversity of our village. I am not saying that we are completely cut off from each other. There is undoubtedly an element of biculturalism in New Zealand. We boast the coexistence of two distinct cultures. Two, meaning in this context, Māori and the loosely termed New Zealand European. These are the first two houses. Our problem is our views on the third house, and the fourth house, the fifth house, the rest of the village, really. Because, hey, we were here first, weren't we? Our houses are oldest, aren't they? So therefore, we have a claim to the village that others just simply don't. In this mentality, we truly are childish. Of course we don't have a claim. We are the children, true. But at some point, all children must learn to share. And this is a lesson that we need to learn fast, all of us, before our selfishness leads to more resentment. We need to learn this. Our government has already promised that we will share 30,267 New Zealand residency applications from 196 different countries were accepted in the 2012 to 2013 quarter alone. Our village is becoming vast and varied, and if we don't keep up, the only people who we will alienate will be ourselves, as we live with our fear of the great unknown. Think of how long it took for Māori and Europeans to coexist in a reasonably fair and united society. We celebrate both cultures now, and in everyday life, at least in my community, race just isn't an issue. I was raised in the far north, and we have this biculturalism down. But when it comes to accepting other cultures, especially Asian cultures, I will admit that I am often shocked by what people say. Maybe they don't mean it. Maybe they're just going along with the crowd. But this child was raised to believe that if you don't have anything nice to say, you should not be saying anything at all. This child was raised to believe in the idea that in order to get something, you have to give something. Call it science, call it equivalent exchange, call it karma, if you will. But this child was raised to believe that treating everybody with respect was just common sense. I don't want anyone judging the depth of my character based on my ethnicity. There have been many times in my life when I have wished that I was not white. When I have wished that I was part of another culture, anything to be less of a stereotype in society's eyes. And when I think of my own life, and the fact that I have wanted for nothing and come from nowhere, I think of those 30,267 other people who must also be trying to break society's expectation of them. If I find it difficult to be proud of my heritage, and I am one of the approved houses in the village, what must it be like for them? The others. The ones the rest of society deems fresh off the boat, despite the fact that their families have been here for generations. How do we change this? How do we unite our village? I believe in education. Education at home, education in schools, and education in our communities. We need to learn more about our various cultures. Learning Te Reo Māori and English just isn't enough. Knowing the karakia and the Lord's Prayer just isn't enough. We have Māori Language Week, we have Race Relations Day once a year, and the rest of the year is nothing. How many of us here actually celebrate Chinese New Year and Holi and Kwanzaa? How many of us here actually know when those are, or what those are? We need to learn. I beg you, educate yourself. Educate your children. Do something different. Our society has fallen into Einstein's idea of insanity because all we are doing is repeating the same actions over and over again with the hope that this will give us different results. We were the children, but the time has come for us to grow up and take matters into our own hands. Soon the next generation will be leading the way, and people will look to us for guidance. What values will we lead with? What life will we live? What ideas will we give to our children? Ko tahi te kōwhao te nira e kuna ai te miro mā. Te miro pango, mi te miro whiro. My dream for Aotearoa, New Zealand is a simple one. I want New Zealand to be a place free of prejudice. I want us to be a country who has learned from our own mistakes as well as the mistakes of others. I want New Zealand to be a country which values and acknowledges all her people, whether they have been here for 5 days or 5 generations. This is the life I choose to live. This is the example I choose to lead with. And this is the idea that I choose to give to my children. It takes a village to raise a child, and many threads to bind that village together. The fates of ancient Greek mythology used many threads to determine the future, and I think it is time we did the same. It is us who will inherit this future after all. So why wouldn't we want it to be bright? Thank you.